today's international workshop on neuropsychology and psychosocial well-being, organized by the Department of Psychology, IQAC, and ICT Committee of Government Shangbana College. Before I introduce our esteemed resource person, I would like to give a brief introduction on the ethics to be followed for a smooth session. While the resource person is delivering her topic, everyone will be put on mute mode. However, you can freely use the chat box to put in your queries while always remembering that this is an academic event. All sessions will be live streamed via HBC official YouTube channel. Attendance link will be dropped in the chat box to collect attendance from students. This link will be dropped approximately 1 hour after the commencement of the session. Students are informed to keep attendance only once. It would be highly appreciated if all could turn on their video cameras so as to make our presence felt and thereby giving a warm ambience. All right, you're not forced to switch on your video, but however, it would be appreciated if you can switch on your video. All right, so now I'll start introducing our esteemed uh, resource person. I feel privileged to introduce our distinguished resource person who is also my mentor and my guru and my role model. I feel fortunate to be her first PhD scholar. So Dr. Laldimpui H.K. Fente is a professor of psychology and director of the Office for International Affairs at Mizoram University, India. She has served as head of Department of Psychology for 2 terms. She has honors in psychology from Mumbai University, a gold medalist in MA Psychology, NEHU, a JRF UGC, and major research recipient of University Grants Commission India, and other state and national institutes and organizations. She was awarded the prestigious Fulbright Senior Research Fellowship, Princeton University, USA. She has successfully guided several PhDs and MPhils and master's dissertation and published widely, mainly in the areas of counseling and clinical psychology, cross-cultural social psychology, school psychology. Among others, she has had training in neuropsychology, diploma in community psychology, child and adolescent mental health, and de-addiction at LIMHANS, India, as well as MI, motivational interview counseling, and psychotherapy for de-addiction and cross-cultural psychology. She has been a member of several state, national, and international organizations, including State Mental Health Authority, American Psychological Association, National Academy of Psychology, IACCP, etc., etc., and is a founder, Secretary General of Alzheimer's and Related Disorders Society of India, Mizoram chapter. She has organized and presented research papers and invited lecturers in numerous state, national, and international academic events in the USA, Italy, Turkey, Czech Republic, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, etc. She was instrumental in giving the Fulbright Specialist Program awarded to Mizoram University to host the great clinical psychologist Professor Days Civikis from Virginia Commonwealth University. Our speaker today, with the help of Dr. Laltan Hima of Turtlang Sinod Hospital, a Fulbright Humphrey himself, hosted by Dr. Days at Virginia Commonwealth University, USA. She was appointed Dean of School of Social Sciences by the Vice Chancellor of Mizoram University on 15th July 2025. Okay, so I now invite Professor Laldinpui HK Fente to present her topic, Addiction and Neural Pathways, the Vicious Cycle. So baby, are you ready? Okay, I think we're still having problem. Hello, baby, how are you?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So can you see my presentation?
Yes, we
The
can
7 days
see. Yeah.
international workshop on.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm so glad that you have called me for this international workshop on neuropsychology and psychosocial well-being. When I first heard about uh, the Shambhana College Department of Psychology organizing this event, I was very, very enthusiastic. And when I heard about, neuropsychology and psychosocial well-being, immediately the thought occurred to me that I should talk about addiction
Mm,
because this is such an important topic uh, with respect to Mizoram, not only
mm,
Mizoram, but the rest of India as well as, internationally. Because this
mm,
is something that we have not been able to conquer uh, with whatever means and methods that we have. Uh, a good deal of work is being done by the current government also. However, there is much that we need to learn, especially from the perspectives of neuropsychology. That is why I wanted to bring this, although I was not, given the topic specifically to do on addiction and neural pathways. I call this actually you had given me the impact of addiction on neural pathways. And when I
mm,
was preparing, to speak here, the impact of addiction on neural pathways, or is it neural pathways,
mm,
the physiological that is impacting the psychological, or the psychological that is impacting the physiological. That is why I have brought this addiction and neural pathways, a vicious cycle. So we will look at it from both angles, from the neuropsychological, because it is the neuro, the physiological and the psychological. So I feel that it is very apt to take it this way. I'm going to start from a very, very basic place, because I have heard that people who are not or have not studied neuropsychology will also be a part, were also interested to be a part of this international workshop. So
mm,
that is why I have brought a very basic, uh, talk. Of course, I don't have the authority to speak, to make up things and speak. Uh, so I have done a lot of references from NIDA, uh, as well as from NIMHANS, as well as from our textbooks in neuropsychology, and also, several books. So this is not my own, because I have done, of course, many researches in this area. However, and I will be sharing a little bit, I think, about our research work towards the end. that matches, I think, what the state government is doing. And a lot of psychologists are also involved in the combat in dealing with drugs and its abuse and misuse in the state of Mizoram, especially. Mm. So let me start off by looking at this, my own experience. Uh, I have brought, I was abroad just a few weeks ago, and I have brought home this coffee latte down, because lalpar moi kyangte, who we expect to become doctors soon, had brought me coffee because she knows that I like coffee also. And she also knows that I am diabetic, so I cannot have lots of sugar. So she brought me what was supposedly a two-in-one. However, we found that it was not a two-in-one. Two-in-ones are coffee without the sugar. So that failed. The attempt to oil me up failed badly. So I got this one, coffee latte from elsewhere, out from beyond the country. And I bought 2 packets. 2 packets have 40 sticks, 40 coffee. And I kept having that because this is my favorite one without sugar. And I kept on having it. And by the last stick, that is the 40th one, within about, 2-3 weeks, I finished the entire 40 sticks of coffee latte, Dow coffee. And by the end of the packets, I was almost in tears, and I was telling my friends, oh, my Dow coffee is finished. What will I do? Oh gosh, I don't even feel like having coffee anymore. And before, Thinkpui used to be the drink that used to wake me up in the morning. It is what motivates me to get up in the morning, coffee. Or Thinkpui. However, without the Dow coffee, so I was almost unable to, or the tastiness of Thinkpui and other kinds of coffee had decreased as I was getting, a whole lot every day of the Dow coffee latte. And I also knew that many, many people, when I was in that country, were very, very, uh, looking forward to have this particular Sing beer. But when they go home, they do without it. Me also now, I do without the Dow coffee, and now I have almost forgotten this. And many people, the Sing beer, when they go to this particular country, they would have it day in, day out. This is the greatest beer in the world. But when they go back to their own countries, in the US, UK, it's so far away, you don't get Sing beer, and they would post that, oh, I'm just, craving so much for the Sing beer and all the beers that we have over here. What are those? Heineken, uh, and all those other beers. I've forgotten their names that are very, very popular in the US. The light ones that they start drinking even at lunch, they would say beer o'clock, that is after lunch. Beer o'clock is 12 o'clock. So, but now after a few months, they have almost forgotten. So, what is addiction? Addiction is defined as a chronic relapsing disorder characterized by compulsive drug. I put it in inverted comma because drug to be qualified as drugs, we have a certain way of, categorizing substances to be called drugs, right? Compulsive drug seeking and use despite adverse consequences. it's going to lead to adverse consequences. All right. However, we still do it. It is considered a brain disorder because it involves functional changes to brain circuits involved in reward, stress, and self-control. So the reward system, the reward pathways, the pathways is basically what we will try to look at. But I note that we are not physiologists or psychiatrists. And however, it is very important to know, the raw material of our subject matter, that is the mind and the behavior. That is why when I was being trained in South India, also in neuropsychology, especially when I was in the Center for Addiction Medicine, and I was working with psychiatrists and I was working with neurologists also, because we had to do a lot of neuropsychological testing in that particular institution. People, the neurologists, the neurosurgeons, because especially neurosurgeons, when we work with them, because the MRI, functional MRI, and all those CT scans and all could be faulty, the results. So they always needed to cross-check with the neuropsychologist, because when a part of the brain is uh, physically uh, physically not working or damaged, then there is a behavioral sequelae that proves it. So we always needed to do neuropsychological testing. Uh, and then whatever they wrote, the psychiatrist and the neurologist, whatever they wrote, we used to go to the nurse station, and then we would download and check, what is the tegmentum, what is the all those regions of the brain that people are affected, especially in the brain center of that particular institution. So there is a lot of trust between us if we know what we are talking about in terms of the behavioral sequelae of that particular region of the brain. So that is why I used to like neuropsychology a lot, but also not only the psychological part, but the physiological part. So it is always good to know these things. And there's going to be so much more physiological that is required to master in order to understand about this, the vicious cycle, what I call the vicious cycle, especially in order to treat. Treatment, we are not going to be able to talk about it tonight. There is this treatment, the model that I had come up with, that I had proposed. It was accepted. However, it was during the COVID, and I was not able to implement it. This is the mesomeal rehabilitation. However, the rehabilitation part we are not going to be able to talk about. But I feel that when we know about the what is going on in addiction and what parts of the brain, the physiological part as well as the psychological part, impulse control and all those behavioral things, it is easier to treat, because basically we know about it, but what do we do about is basically that is the end goal for learning all of this, and not just to understand, but because psychology is a helping profession. So that is what we always try to focus when we learn about the status or the nature of things. Addiction is a lot like other diseases, such as heart disease, because both disrupt the normal, healthy functioning of an organ in the body. You know which parts of the body is affected, right? If it is a heart disease, the heart, but not only the heart, all right? And if it is addiction, All right, you can be addicted to, so like what I said, like beer or caffeine, nicotine. What is the addictive part in coffee? All right, or in Thingpui, that is tea. All right, so all of that, the healthy functioning of an organ in the body is affected or disrupted, and both have serious harmful effects, and both are in many cases preventable and treatable. If left untreated, however, they can last a lifetime and may lead to death, right? As we would all know. Now, I'm going to start from top down, in the sense we will go, from the top, in the sense that, uh, how addiction can impact the brain. This is the PET scans that compares the brain of an individual with a history of cocaine use disorder, the middle and the right. All right, this middle one and the right are PET scans of brains of an individual with a history of cocaine use disorder to the brain of an individual without a history of cocaine use. This one is a normal brain, and these two are PET scans. These are all PET scans. As you would know, my students, you're all used to seeing all these in your neuropsychological or biological psychology textbooks. So these two are PET scans of brain with a history of cocaine use disorder, and this is a normal brain. Now, the person who has had a cocaine use disorder has lower levels of the D2 dopamine receptor. That is depicted in red. This is the D2, or the dopamine receptor, that is in red, that is depicted here. In brains like yours, we have naturally D2 dopamine receptors that are very, very active. All right. If you are enjoying my talk now, this part will be very active. If you did not have the chance or the time to have your food, say, for example, because you had gone out, because you got stuck in the traffic and you have just joined, and now you are in front of your phone or your, or your laptop, looking at these pictures and enjoying at the same time, so especially Voxa and Marza and all of that, due to the dopamine receptor would be the ones in red. All right, that is the pleasure producing neurotransmitter that is in our central nervous, in our brain. All right, in the stratum, especially when somebody does cocaine. All right, so in red, in the stratum, 1 month, this is the middle, and 4 months, the right after stopping cocaine use, compared to the non-user here in the right. All right, so the level of dopamine receptors in the brain of the cocaine user are higher at the 4-month mark, but have not returned to the levels observed in the non-user left. All right, this is after a month of doing cocaine repeatedly, how the dopamine receptors are affected by cocaine use. And after 4 months of abstinence, you can see a slight reuptake or coming back of the dopamine receptors D2 here, but it has not come back to the level of the normal brain. So we can see here physically with MRI, functional MRI, PET scans, and things like that, modern technology, we are able to look at dopamine, receptors and how they contribute to the loss of control in cocaine users. So definitely physiologically, the use of these substances greatly impact the brain. So this is evidence that we have. And why do people take drugs? Few reasons. There are numerous reasons, and the more popular ones are to feel good. Drugs can produce intense feelings of pleasure. This initial euphoria is followed by other effects which differ with the type of drug used. For example, with stimulants such as cocaine, the high is followed by feelings of power, self-confidence, and increased energy. In contrast, the euphoria caused by opioids, such as heroin, is followed by feelings of relaxation and satisfaction. So whenever we do research, I know that young students and researchers are a part of this international workshop. So I would like to, when we have done, we just completed, a few years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, Lalming Moyi, our clinical psychologist, I hope she's here also. She worked under my supervision, and we did the impacts, how people are able to abstain. We are basically looking at, the different personality factors of people who are able to abstain for a longer period of time, because as you know, drug addiction is, even when people are abstaining, they would say that it is a they would still say that they are recovering addicts because they have to recover each day. So all those reinforcements and how it stays and how the entire the neural pathways is affected is what we are going to talk about at the ending part. We are doing top down now. We will do how all these from a global perspective, and then we will zone in on the nitty-gritties of it. So in her research also, we decided to do alcohol use disorder and of the substance use disorders, alcohol in another group and opioids in another group, because the impact on the brain or on behavior and the feelings, the psychological impact of it tends to be different. So that is why we did not want to put the groups together in one group, because so many factors are involved in abstinence. Now people so take to feel good, and the way they feel good varies depending on the types of drugs that people consume. And people also take drugs to feel good and to feel better. Some people who suffer from social anxiety, stress, depression, start using drugs to try to feel less anxious, because I have experience during the COVID period. I was taken to ZMC. I took my COVID situation very, very bad, which was contributed more by my anxiety than my physiological loss or depletion of sodium, because we did not know that sodium was affected by the COVID, and they were only looking at other things because it was a new thing. But I was so anxious. My being taken, I had to take psychiatric tablets, psychoactive substances to cool me down, because I was so anxious. I was so stressed. I was in my room here on my own, and the doctors were taking care of me through WhatsApp, through videos, and they thought that actually this was the COVID was really, really affecting me. But when we did an entire, understanding of my COVID situation, it was more of an anxiety situation. Now, my medical doctor friends also, they are still taking, psychotropic drugs, for anxiety, as I did, because they are also medical doctors. But we need to take it because it is just so, stifling. It is just so difficult to bear. So in a way, I was lucky that I was able to feel that heightened level of anxiety, because as a psychologist, the things that we go through, the psychological problems that we go through, also help us in order to be able to understand the people that we treat. And that much of anxiety, I would always say that, before we do therapy, let us do, psychiatric examination, whether you would need, I would do like that, so because it is so very, very unbearable. So we take drugs to feel better too. Stress can play a major role in starting and continuing drug use, as well as relapse, that is, return to drug use in patients recovering from addiction. There's a whole lot to talk about relapse, because basically that was what we were, researching about the relapse and how to help, relapse situation and rehabilitation from addiction and things like that. Anyway, and people also do drugs to do better. Some people feel pressure to improve their focus in school or at work, or abilities in sports. Right? For example, one of my clients, when I was in that particular institution in South India, in Bangalore, I was usually given people from the Northeast, and I was lucky to get somebody from Mizoram. And basically, he started doing drugs to do better in sports. He was very good in sports, football, you know how we are in football. So we have our sports psychologist here also, I hope. So this is something that we need to keep in mind also, because people want to perform better. And so, we do drugs because of that also. All right, and this can play a role in trying or continuing to use drugs such as prescription stimulants or cocaine too. Now, and curiosity and social pressure. This is what most of our social workers and NGOs and people involved in counseling and also research, that is descriptive researchers, would find out that in Mizoram, it is very much because of curiosity and social pressure that people do drugs. Especially teens are particularly at risk because peer pressure can be very strong. Because we are an extremely collectivistic culture, peer pressure is even stronger than in individualistic cultures, right? And ours is in individualism, collectivism, we have the horizontal, we have the vertical, individualism, collectivism, and ours is a horizontal rather than in terms of collectivism too. And that kind of culture is very conducive to social pressure or peer pressure to do drugs. Our sem dum dum abil titi also applies here. So adolescence is a developmental period during which the presence of risk factors such as peers who use drugs may lead to substance use. And when I was doing this, I was reminded of that. Oh, this is a concert. So I was thinking about Coldplay that Dr. Mazami and all attended. Not that one, but the Coldplay that has brought out that CEO's downfall. All right. Just joking, all right, to wake you all up, because that has piqued our interest a lot. Now, if taking drugs makes people feel good or better, what is the problem? All right, what is the problem? You do all that. What is wrong with that? You want to feel good, all right? You want to feel better. You want to do better. You are curious, and and your friends are saying, yeah, this is damn good. Just do one shot or something like that, and then you're curious. So what is wrong with that? Now, when they first use a drug, people may perceive what seem to be positive effects, right? They also may believe they can control their use. Definitely. But drugs can quickly take over a person's life over time. If drug use continues, other pleasurable activities become less pleasurable, and the person has to take the drug just to feel normal. So we have this in miso very, very apt term, in miso anora, anorle toa. All right, that means this person, because when you repeatedly do drugs or alcohol or whatever, substance of addiction, people need to constantly take it in order to feel normal. So I don't know if nor in miso comes from this normal, in the addiction literature. But anyway, so people need to take in order to just to feel normal and not to feel high anymore. They have a hard time controlling their need to take drugs, even though it causes many problems for themselves and their loved ones, because it takes so much money also. Some people, just the other day also, people who were, nowadays we see them a lot on the streets, right? And some people may start to feel the need to take more of a drug, or take it more often, even in the early stages of their drug use. All right, the interviews will tell you from the streets also. And these are the signs of addiction. I told you we're going to start from a very, top-down, simple ways. Now, do people choose to keep using drugs? The initial decision to take drugs is typically voluntary everywhere. People does not grab you and put or inject you, although this happens in some Middle Eastern, I would not say Middle Eastern, but I'll just say in some culture, it does happen. Uh, Not culturally, however, where people are less free. There are instances where people uh, are involuntarily injected drugs and things like that. All right, but with continued use, a person's ability to exert self-control can become seriously impaired. This impairment in self-control is the hallmark of addiction. Now, brain imaging studies of people with addiction show physical changes in areas of the brain that are critical to judgment, decision-making, learning and memory, and behavior control. I would like to ask you all which part of the brain, because you have are students of psychology or biological psychology, those that have done the brains, that have studied about the brain, the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the occipital lobe, all those regions of the brain, the lobes of the brain. I'm sure you will be able to tell me which area of the brain or lobes of the brain is involved in judgment, in decision making, in learning and memory and behavior control and things like that. All right, so addictions show physical changes in this area, and we'll come to that area a little bit later. Now, these changes help explain the compulsive nature of addiction, because behavioral control is affected. So compulsivity, learning and memory, all right, memory is very good for a certain kind of substance that even after 10 years of rehabilitation, of not having done, a person sees his provider, and is very, very afraid of relapsing even after 10 years. That is why people who are recovering says that even after 10 years, they are recovering addicts, recovering users, although they do not use anymore, but to use becomes very, very much strongly associated with the people or the environment in which these are taken or used. And decision making and judgment and all of that part of the brain is critically involved. Why do some people become addicted to drugs while others do not? So we have many factors. No single factor, however, determines whether a person will become addicted to drugs. So when we do awareness also, this coming Sunday also, I'll be going to do some awareness campaign. I'm involved in this. This is something that I like to do. Now, as with other diseases and or disorders, the likelihood of developing an addiction differs from person to person. Not everyone is the same. So when we do as psychologists, as mental health professionals, when we do awareness campaigns also, sometimes we exaggerate too much, but sometimes exaggeration also works. But it is important, especially within our own community, what is the truth. All right. That if you do this, you're going to become addicted and blah, blah, blah. We would go like that. But, we should know that there are multiple, determining factors, and not one person is the same as the other. And no single factor determines whether a person will become addicted to drugs. In general, however, the more risk factors a person has, the greater the chance that taking drugs will lead to drug use and addiction. Protective factors, on the other hand, reduce a person's risk. So risk and protective factors may be either environmental or biological, as we have put here. The risk factors are aggressive behavior in childhood, lack of parental supervision, low peer refusal skills. That is why we emphasize on life skills too, all right? And we emphasize on parental supervision and parenting in our society, all right? And aggressive behavior. All these things piqued the interest of teachers, the interest of psychologists, right? And social workers. And another risk factor is drug experimentation. Another risk factor is availability of drugs at school or in the college or in the community, like it is in Aizawl in Mizoram. Availability of drugs and community poverty. All right, so I don't think it is good at all. We have this, Mirethe in, or something that, that is built especially for people who are less fortunate, and putting them together, because we make a community of poverty. And so therefore people in those areas are becoming more and more vulnerable. The risk factors are high. And the protective factors, self-efficacy, belief in self-control, and parental monitoring and support, especially in collectivistic cultures, what we call parental monitoring and support, whether it is positive or not, it is totally different from the Western countries to the Eastern countries. Positive relationships, good grades, school anti-drug policies and things like that. This is also in India now. We have this mandate from the University Grants Commission and the Ministry of Education that every every institution of learning should have counselors, and they should have policies that looks at the mental health of the learners and neighborhood resources. So all these are protective factors. The more protective factors that a person has, the person is likely to evade addiction, and the more risk factors that the person is uh, in, then the person is likely, to have to be vulnerable to drug addiction. So the biological and the environment, the non-biological, does influence uh, the the risk. Biological factors that can affect a person's risk of addiction include their genes, the heritability. You have already studied about that, the stage of development, and also ethnicity. Ethnicity, I studied a lot about ethnicity also in my research proposal, whether, because, but this can lead to uh, uh, discrimination and things like that. So we don't want to declare to people that this group of, ethnic groups are more prone to addiction, the biological factors and things like that, and the genetic makeup. Uh, so it is for the workers that should know, and it's not for lay or everybody in the community that should be informed about certain section of population or that have biological risk. Now, scientists estimate that genes, including the effects environmental factors have on a person's gene expression, the epigenetics. All right, the genotype, the phenotypes, the wrinkled piece, and all of that you used to learn in your first year bachelor's in physiological psychology. All of that, uh, you know, uh, also contribute to that. And this accounts for between 40 and 60% of a person's risk of addiction. That is what research results in epigenetics have told us. Also, teens and people with mental disorders are at greater risk of drug use and addiction than others. So there is this obvious biological vulnerability. Children's earliest interactions within the family are crucial to their healthy development and risk for drug use. And what environmental factors increase the risk of addiction? Related to family, school, neighborhood, and factors that can increase a person's risk include home and family, because the home environment, especially during childhood, is a very important factor, right? Parents or older family members who use drugs or misuse alcohol or who break the law can increase children's risk of future drug problems. And also peer and school, right? We have already spoken about the peer influence. Teens who use drugs can sway even those without risk factors to try drugs for the first time. So even in our Mizo society, also this very much a big factor, as the NGOs have discovered. And struggling in school or having poor social skills can put a child at further risk for using or becoming addicted to drugs, because they don't know how to say no. That is why it is so important for children to learn skills. These are the prerequisites to our neuropsychological impact. And what are the factors? Early use and how it is used. So we are coming into the neuropsychological, the physiological more and more as we go along. Early use, why early use, and how it is used. Now, although taking drugs at any age can lead to addiction, that is clear, right? People who are older also can, taking drugs due to, say, for example, pain, due to arthritis, due to, a condition, this can lead to addiction. All right. And research shows that the earlier people begin to use drugs, the more likely they are to develop serious problems. And this has been ascertained by researchers. That is why we are doing so much for schools and for especially Sunday schools and so no income and and in school Foundation for Drug Free Mizoram is taking up so much work because prevention is very, very important at a very early age. Why? Because the nervous system is especially vulnerable at this developmental period. So this may be due to the harmful effects that drugs can have on the developing brain. It also may result from a mix of early social and biological risk factors. All right, a person, say for example, the genetics, the heritability of, say for example, alcoholism there. All right. And so therefore, if a parent or parents are doing it, they tend to not work or able to finance their family well. And so therefore, community poverty and poor parenting and all of that mixed with the biological risk of having a parent who is an addict. All right. So including so all of that, lack of stable home, family exposure to physical or sexual abuse, genes, mental illness, and all of that. All right. Still, the fact remains that early use is a strong indicator of problems ahead, including addiction. That is why we always talk about ACE, adverse childhood experiences, that easily leads to, taking of drugs, experiencing drugs, because of all of that, wanting to feel good, wanting to forget, and all of that, and how the drug is taken is also the physiological side of it, right? Smoking a drug or injecting it into a vein increases its addictive potential. So both smoked and injected drugs enter the brain within seconds. When you smoke, all right, because it's pretty close to the central nervous system, right? And injecting is through the arteries, right? That reaches the brain very, very quickly, producing a powerful rush of pleasure. However, this intense high can fade within a few minutes. Scientists believe this powerful contrast drives some people to repeatedly use drugs to recapture the fleeting, pleasurable state. This is where memory also applies. All right, it is not only about, drugs is impacting memory, poor memory, and what is reinforcing is what is important over here. Now, when you look at the images of brain development in healthy children and teens, just look at that. As the brain matures, experiences prune excess neuronal connections while strengthening those that are used more often. All right. Many scientists think that this process contributes to a steady reduction in gray matter volume during adolescence, depicted as the yellow to blue transition in the figure. When you look at this is 5 years. All right. This is the top view. This is the side view. I hope you all are able to see. If you join from your phone, you probably are not able to see very well, but this is the images of the developing healthy children. All right, brain of healthy children from 5 years to 20 years of age. All right, and when the brain matures, it becomes more and more gray. Why is that? All right, many scientists think that this process contributes to the steady reduction, all right, in gray matter volume seen during adolescence, depicted as the yellow in adolescence, as environmental forces help determine which connections will wither and which will thrive. The brain circuits that emerge become more efficient. Myelination there. All right, you already know, you have already learned about myelination, then the myelin sheath there, the nodes of Ranvier there, how quickly neural transmission takes place when the white matter multiplies. All right, because more and more white matter means more and more quicker circuits in the brain. However, this is a process that can cut both ways because not all patterns of behavior are desirable or healthy. However, the path that is taken more frequently will be the paths that are developed. I'm sure when you do the neuropsychology of or the neurobiology of learning, you must remember engram, right? That invisible uh, map in the brain for learning. You know, the routes that are traveled quick is grooved even when you depict it in a drawing, right? The environment is like an artist who creates a sculpture by chipping away excess marble, all right? And it is being molded, you know, like in the brain, basically. And just like bad artists can produce bad art, environments with negative factors like drugs there, malnutrition, bullying, sleep deprivation, and all of that. All right, when you have sleep deprivation, especially the youngsters that are joining here also, these can lead to efficient uh, negative factors can lead to efficient but potentially harmful circuits that conspire against a person's well-being. All right. So the brain continues to develop into adulthood and undergoes dramatic changes during adolescence. That is why during adolescence, especially about 13, 14 years old, you know, the tampering with drugs and the experience with drugs, the earlier that a person tries or experiment with drugs, the more likely they are likely to develop addiction as young adults. One of the brain areas still maturing during adolescence is the prefrontal cortex. We'll come to this. Prefrontal cortex is very, very important. One of the areas, that when you all have done your neuropsychology classes about the functions of the reward pathways, and that you may think is the part that is most active. But what is very, very important to note is that the reward pathway stretches over to the prefrontal cortex, where decision making and all those very, very important day-to-day functioning is controlled, is affected. So the part of the brain, so this prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that allows people to assess situations, make sound decisions there, time management there, keep emotions there, and your desires under control there. All right, all of that, even your working memory, because the prefrontal cortex is so important, and it is the part that develops fully, develops the last to be fully developed. All right, so the fact that this critical part of a teen's brain is still a work in progress. So when you are still adolescent, 17, 18, 19, even 20, it is still a work in progress, and this puts them at risk for trying drugs or continuing to take them. So it's very, very crucial that we convey this message to our young brothers and sisters. Introducing drugs during this period of development may cause brain changes that have profound and long-lasting consequences. Getting into the reward system and how, so let us do the second part. Then we will have the third part. It is 2038. 2038, not too much time because we started late too. However, we should be able to finish it. And if you have any questions, please type them up. If we are not able to do it tonight, I would like to answer to your questions online too, because the seminar or the workshop have just started. So we will have time to address your questions. Now, when activities like eating, please do not mind the meso part, all right? Because I use these slides for my other part of involvement in our community. When activities like eating, playing, socializing, all of these are performed, the brain rewards the body through a complex pleasure center, which reinforces the desire to repeat the behavior. This pleasure center is tucked away inside this. It is inside this, very well protected, that you cannot see from outside. So when I show you, the centers that are involved, it note that what we see is within this, all right, inside here at the core of the brain, which is the pleasure center. All right, Nuam Tina Center. I call it Lomna Center, the pleasure center in Mizo. If any one of you is Mizo, all right, you will know you will get what I'm talking about. And when we are very young, it is like that. I've seen all of this. I used to like this because I used to like the brain so much. Of course, I do still like it. And I used to take them around in buckets, and I had thus free access to the brain center in that particular institution in Bangalore. Professor Shankar and all used to allow me to touch, because I used to be amazed by these brains, by these materials, because I find it so amazing that all the thoughts, all of this, and there is so much that we still don't know, even about addiction. I wanted to share with you the new findings that we know, in terms of, the assessment that we are able to do with functional MRI and things like that. Anyway, so the largest lobe, like I had said, this blue, is the frontal lobe, where you do your planning, organizing, problem solving, decision making, memory, attention, controlling behavior, all the emotions, although it is controlled more by the limbic system, impulses and all of that, all of these have their associations with the prefrontal cortex. We'll know more about that. And when we look at all this, note that that area is the reward. All right, the one in red. This for judgment, movement, sensation, vision, coordination, pain, memory, reward, and all of that. The neurons in all of these areas of the brain is affected. But principally, this pleasure center is, what is triggered by substances of abuse, basically because they mimic the pleasure that a person feels when a person is naturally happy, undergoing pleasurable experiences and stimulation and things like that. That is mimicked basically by the substances. And so addiction, again, because we are getting into the physiological part of it, a state in which an organism engages in a compulsive behavior, very, very important, rewarding, pleasurable, reinforcing, negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement. I'll go more quickly now. Loss of control, and all of these are the behavior, especially four, that are very, very important in maintenance of addiction. So activation of the reward pathways by addictive drugs. All right, so the pathway is here, and this pathway, this pathway, when a person takes substance of abuse. When we say substance of abuse, it is something that creates pleasure, a feeling of pleasure when there is nothing that is to be so happy about, so it is a mimicking in the brain. When, basically, this is the rat that you often see when you study about the neural pathways, when the electrodes is put out in this, the central nervous system of the rat, and they put other substances that are very, very like cheese and things like that. And many, many experiments have been done. They would always find that even rats, they like that activation of the reward pathways so much that they can even starve themselves to death, because that activation of the pathway is giving false pleasure, of satiation, of satisfaction, but does nothing to the physiological sustenance of a species, maybe animals and also human beings. So you can even, because the need for that is so high that a person even starve themselves to death because of that. So it's very, very potent. This we have already done. So we were talking about the neural transmission. What is extremely important is that the mimicking. When you're going to talk about the mimicking, you need to know about the synaptic transmission, right? You have the postsynaptic neuron, the presynaptic neuron, how neurotransmitters go from one place, from one neuron to another, the EPSP, the IPSP, and the all or none law, and the sodium potassium pump, and all of that you have learned about how neurons interact with one another is very, very important to understand about these neural pathways. Basically, that is it. It's just that the neurotransmitters are basically the ones that produces pleasure. So basically, synaptic pruning, removal of excess unhelpful connections between neurons. It is like in a growing city, the road frequently traveled will be strengthened and the least traveled will be left uncared for. That is the strength that things like cocaine, like substances does to the neural transmission, right? So myelination will happen, and so it's like providing a growing city with a fast and integrated communication when myelination grows as a person's brain grows. And when a developing brain is given these substances and it develops as the person develops, that is why younger people are even more vulnerable than adults to be involved in addiction. So this is the images above. This shows much more active transmission. Here in this top one, this is a 15-year-old non-drinker's brain, and this is the drinker's brain. So the activities in the brain is very much affected. Here also alcoholic and normal brain. And here this is particularly a very original uh, uh, scan of brain that has been found in that particular institution in southern India. So this is what I used to say, you have to try and all of that, but that is not what we are getting at. We are almost done. So bear with me here after having given all the top things, the global things, how the brain is affected, how actually it is affected is what we are going to come down to the last bit in this last bit of information that I have gathered together for us to study. So a basic primer on the human brain. To understand how addictive substances affect the brain, it is important first, like I have said before, to understand the basic biology of healthy brain function. It is an amazing, complex organ that is constantly at work, even while we are sleeping. And within the brain, a mix of chemical, electrical processes, the neural transmission is electrochemical, as we know, right? And the body's most basic functions like breathing and digestion there. These processes also control how people react to multitudes of sounds, smells, and other sensory stimuli around them, and they organize and direct individuals' highest thinking and emotive powers so that they can interact with other people, carry out daily activities, and make complex decisions. We are just amazing, aren't we? I find human beings, so these are the neurons. All of that, you would know. Dopamine is made in cell body. Dopamine is shipped down the axon. Dopamine is released from the terminal. Dopamine stimulates dopamine receptors. All right. So D2 that we spoke about right from the beginning. All right. So these are the synaptic vesicles. Remember? Oh, I used to teach physiological psychology and I used to love it so much. The synaptic vesicles containing dopamine. And, sodium potassium pump will allow the dopamine to flush out into the synaptic cleft. And there are the synapses that reuptakes. And when it is flooded with dopamine, that is when the person experiences the thrill. All right. And these naturally occur when we experience pleasurable things. However, when we experience, so that is where psychology or your mind and your physiology meets. Yeah, like if Descartes and all those people, the continental philosophers, were still alive, they would find it so amazing too. I wish they were still, because they're such deep thinkers, are philosophers, from where we draw all these, where we grow up to this point where we know all of these, So, the brain is made of an estimated 86 billion nerve cells. All right, we know all these are neurons. The cell body and its nucleus, control the neurons' activities. The axon extends, all of the axons. All right, the axon extends, the dendrites. All right, the cell body, the nucleus. All right, and the hair and the body and the arm and the fingertips. In the fingertips, you have all these vesicles. All right, presynaptic neuron, postsynaptic neuron, and that here is the synaptic cleft over here. All right, and our brain is made up of these tiny little ones that we are not even able to see with our eyes. I tried to see, I used to take all those brain, dissect them. You cannot see them at all because they're so small, because that is why I have billions of them. and they communicate with one another through chemical messages called neurotransmitters. All right, so those are the neurotransmitters cross a tiny gap, and all of that I don't need to say anymore because we're running out of time. But the basics of these is what we need to understand in order to understand about drug addiction. Neurons are organized in clusters that perform specific functions. All right, some networks are involved in thinking, some in learning, some in emotion, some in memory, and all of that. All right, and they're all up there. Now, areas of the human brain that are especially important in addiction. These are the primary regions. The brain, like we know, you have been doing your lobes of the brain, the functions of the brain, and a whole lot of it. And the primary regions involved, however, in substance use disorders is what we are getting at this point. I hope you guys are still with me. It is almost 9, but we will be able to finish this in about 15 minutes. All right. Dr. Juliet, am I still okay?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. You're still alive,
Take your
right?
time. Yeah, very, very, very interested. Very
Yeah,
interesting. Enjoying
okay.
myself.
Yeah. So the primary brain regions are these: the basal ganglia, the prefrontal cortex, the extended amygdala. And within these, so this is the basal ganglia. See, all right, the red is the basal ganglia. All right, and the others are just related structures. And this is the basal ganglia. Here it is bluish, and here it is red. All right, this is what Wikipedia has given me, this particular picture, and this is from NIDA. All right, if you want to see, because what I am saying is all available with us. All right, in your textbooks and also even online. They're all available. Now, the brain has many regions, like we have said before, and they are interconnected, forming dynamic networks that are responsible for specific functions, such as attention, self-regulation, perception, language, there, reward, emotion, and movement, along with many other functions. Here, we focus only on 3 regions, all right? Don't think that only these 3 regions are involved. These are the main parts that are involved, but the entire areas of the brain, because occipital lobe is right at the back, right? However, you have the association areas that poke out when you do the neuropsychology. So we focus here on these 3 regions only because they are key components of networks that are intimately involved in the development and persistence of substance use disorders: the basal ganglia, the extended amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex, as may be seen in this figure. So the basal ganglia control the rewarding or pleasurable effects of substance use and are also responsible for the formation of habitual substance taking. All right, so it is the basal ganglia. All right, that is important here in terms of the pleasure principle there. The extended amygdala is involved in stress and the feelings of unease, anxiety. They are so tightly packed within the folds of our brain. All right, irritability there, anxiety, to calm people. All right, that typically accompanies substance withdrawal there. All right. Now, the prefrontal cortex is involved in executive function. All right. So the executive function, that is the ability to organize, thoughts and activities and prioritize tasks. I should do this before I do that. I'll finish this, and then like we do planning, right? That's the executive function. Time management. All right, I have to get up and snooze. all right, my time, my alarm clock, all right, will ring at 6, 9 minutes twice. I can go snoozing, but the third time I have to get up, all right, and make decisions. Otherwise, I'm going to be late because MZU takes, so much time to get there and all of that, all right, and including exerting control over substance taking too. The taking of substance itself, the controlling of behavior for that also is responsible by the prefrontal cortex. Now, these brain areas and their associated networks are not solely involved in substance use disorders. All right, they are not solely involved in substance use disorders. All right, these systems are broadly integrated and serve many critical roles in helping humans and other animals survive. Basically, why? So, for example, having sex, consuming food, there certain activities, there chemicals within the basal ganglia, they produce feelings of pleasure. All right, it is not only when you take drugs that feelings of pleasure. Basically, the feelings of pleasure that you get naturally is mimicked by these substances. All right, and these substances are all also affected by other drugs, not only cocaine, the heroin, all right, paracetamol, how do you feel, the pain, for pain there, for fever there, for all of that, it is, all these are affecting our system. Now, this reward motivates individuals to continue to engage in these activities, thereby ensuring the survival of the species. All right, so this pleasure or the reward system is very, very good, because what is rewarding, all right, is something that you want to do again and again. All right. So when you eat, it is rewarding, right? Without eating, you're not going to survive. It is for the survival of the species. Likewise, in the face of danger, activation of the brain's stress systems within the extended amygdala drive fight or flight responses. All right. The amygdala, that is the portion of the brain, this extended amygdala that we can see here, is responsible for the fight and flight responses, the general adaptation syndrome that you have been learning, all right, in your stress, emotion, scoping, and health paper also. All right. So these responses too are critical for survival. All right, as will be described. All right, these and other survival systems are basically, they are for our survival. However, these survival systems are hijacked by addictive substances. That is why there's nothing, that is why it is bad. Like we said, what is wrong with it? When you want to feel pleasure, you want to do well, you want to do better. But when drugs are used in order to have those things, it is all the survival system is hijacked by these addictive substances. All right. Now let us look at the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia are a group of structures located deep within the brain. Now note that although we can see, they are within the brain, you cannot see at all right, because the cortices are blocking our view. All right, this is like a transparent view that is shown here. Yeah, so the basal gang deep within the brain that play an important role in keeping body movement smooth and coordinated. All right, so they are very, very close to this motor system also, as you would see. They are also involved in learning routine behaviors and forming habits. All right, the basal ganglia. So that is why habits is important. Reinforcement is important. All right, habits is about learning. All right, and two subregions of the basal ganglia are particularly important in substance use disorder. The nucleus accumbens there. Oh, that is in the pleasure, the reward pathways. You will see that, the NAC. all right, which is involved in motivation and the experience of reward there. And the dorsal stratum, which is involved in forming habits and other routine behaviors over here. All right, these are the areas that the substance of abuse, when we take them, go and do, false things, as if you are high. That is why the term high is so telling. And the extended amygdala, let's look at this one. The extended amygdala and its subregions located beneath the basal ganglia. This is the basal ganglia. And beneath that, all right, the extended amygdala regulate the brain's reactions to stress, including behavioral responses like fight or flight, like I explained, that you already know. All right. And when people, I hope I don't need to explain the fight or flight. You have been doing it since you were, since you were class 11 and 12, I think, or at least the first year of bachelor's in psychological science. And negative emotions like unease, anxiety, and irritability. Now, this region also interacts with the hypothalamus, all right, an area of the brain that controls activity of multiple hormone producing glands, such as the pituitary gland there. All right, those master glands are at the base of the brain, and the adrenal glands at the top of each kidney. These glands in turn control reactions to stress and regulate many other bodily processes. So these areas are extremely important. All right. So because addiction, it is to do better or to feel less pain. All right. And all of that, works together in order to make these substances so addictive, I would say. All right. And now this is what I call the vicious cycle. The 3 stages of the addiction cycle. In that, we have learned about the prefrontal cortex, how it is involved, how the extended amygdala is involved, how the basal ganglia is involved, all right, in addiction. Now, this is what I call the vicious cycle. That is why I needed to bring this. Binge or intoxication, all right? A person takes because of all those things that we have listed, all right? And because of all the things that those substances are doing in these areas of the brain, all right? When a person does not do it, there is withdrawal or negative effects. Basically, the binge intoxication is the stage at which an individual consumes an intoxicating substance and experiences its rewarding or pleasurable effects. All right? Withdrawal stage here is the negative effect. All right? Such a pleasurable thing, it is not there, so you withdraw. Withdrawal. The stage at which an individual experiences a negative emotional state in the absence of the substance. All right, negative effect. For example, I don't have Dow coffee anymore. Oh my God, I don't even feel like drinking another kind of coffee. All right. And preoccupation, anticipation, the stage at which one seeks substances again after a period of abstinence. All right. I wanted that so much. I started browsing. Oh, that thing is available in Thailand. It is from Laos. And Laos is too far away, but at least, okay, I can ask. Many people from Millennium Center goes to Thailand. So I can ask them to get from that MBK place, there is this corner where you will get Dow coffee. And I do, a lot of things in order to get that again. But of course, even if I don't get it, I can stay with it without having it. because I'm not dependent on it. Right, the stage at which one seeks substances again after a period of abstinence. All right, so preoccupation, anticipation, I browse and browse. Normal behavior, however, that becomes very, very extreme because of the very, very extreme nature of pleasure and discomfort when in absence that these substances create. So the three stages are linked to and feed on each other. That is why they are linked and feed on each other. They are like a vicious cycle, but they also involve different brain region, the circuits or networks, the neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and so many that you learn by heart, all 14 of them basically that you learn by heart in your neuropsychology classes, right? And result in specific kinds of changes in the brain. A person may go through this three-stage cycle over the course of weeks or months, or progress through it several times in a day. Sometimes just the other day when somebody from, TBCC was interviewed, not TBCC, this person, she's a commercial sex worker. She said that she used to inject about 3 times a day. 3 times a day. Just imagine one shot many times would cost about 1,500, and she needs that much of money. So they would do everything in order to, to get that. So there may be variation in how people progress through the cycle and the intensity with which they experience each of the stages. But nonetheless, the addiction cycle tends to intensify over time. It will intensify over time, leading to greater physical and psychological harm. Now, what is very, very important is the psychological side of it. I'm almost done. All right, I'm 10 minutes. 4 behaviors that are central to the addiction cycle. This is the psychological side of it. Impulsivity, an inability to resist urges, deficits in delaying gratification. I need it now, that sort of a thing. And unreflective decision making. It is a tendency to act without foresight or regard for consequences and to prioritize immediate rewards over long-term goals. Impulsivity, it is like the id, big id. All right, and positive reinforcement, the process by which presentation of a stimulus such as a drug increases the probability of response, like drug taking. And negative reinforcement, the process by which removal of a stimulus such as negative feelings or emotions increases the probability of a response like drug taking. All right, especially withdrawal, Ahian. Negative reinforcement is at work. All right, that is why, because when they suffer, it is just too difficult. All right, so this is what negative reinforcement basically is, what pushes relapse. Compulsivity, repetitive behaviors in the face of adverse consequences, and repetitive behaviors that are inappropriate to a particular situation. People suffering from compulsions too, they often recognize that the behaviors are harmful, but they nonetheless feel emotionally compelled to perform them. Doing so reduces tension, stress, or anxiety. So many so this is the vicious cycle. All right, the positively reinforcing effects of substances tend to diminish this repeated use. All right, this is called tolerance, and may lead to use of the substance in greater amounts, and leads to tolerance and or frequently in an attempt to experience the initial level of reinforcement, that is the highness. Eventually, in the absence of the substance, a person may experience negative emotions such as stress, anxiety, or depression, or feel physically ill. They puke, they feel scratchy and all of that. And this is called withdrawal, which often leads the person to use a substance again to relieve the withdrawal symptoms. That is the negative reinforcement. So as use becomes an ingrained behavior, impulsivity shifts to compulsively. All right. And the primary drivers of repeated substance use shift from positive reinforcement, that is feeling pressure, to negative reinforcement, that is feeling relief from the pain of withdrawal, as the person seeks to stop the negative feelings and physical illness that accompany withdrawal. Eventually, the person begins taking the substance not to get high anymore, but rather to escape the low feelings which, ironically, chronic drug use has contributed. Compulsive substance seeking is a key characteristic of addiction. Therefore, as in the loss of control over use, compulsivity helps to explain why many people with addiction experience relapse after attempting to abstain from or reduce use. They would relapse again because of this compulsive behavior that has been ingrained due to that very, very high effect of the substances in the neural pathways. I think I should end here because I have taken long enough. I think there's still many, not too much more, but I think I have done most of it. I have brought again a recapitulation. All right, a preoccupation anticipation stage, that is the prefrontal cortex. That is the work of the prefrontal cortex, like I have already explained. All right, so let us just recap the vicious cycle. This is the psychological sequelae. Adversely, deeply affects psychosocial well-being. That is truly the topic of this international seminar. To recap, addiction involves a three-stage cycle: binge, intoxication, withdrawal, negative effect, preoccupation, anticipation that worsens over time and involves dramatic changes in the brain, reward, stress, and executive function system. All right. So it is not only the brain reward system. All right. It is also, and these gets used to it. That is how addiction is impacting the neural pathways, because all the executive functions, the stress, all those areas of the brain, all right, they are exchanging information through the neural networks, right? And that is impacted by that addiction, all right? And so it is very, very difficult, to get cured, all right? Even if they wanted, that part has already been too, when you do learning also, it is grooved, when you can picture it. All right, progression through this cycle involves three major regions of the brain, like we have said: the basal ganglia, the extended amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. It is not only the reward pathways that we need to understand. We need to understand all these others, how they, because I know that you have already done them in your neuropsychology classes. However, the multiple neurotransmitters that you have studied, all of those together needs to be understood and learned again and again in order to truly understand substance use disorder or addiction and its impact on the brain, and how the brain malfunctions and it produces behavioral disorders. So the psychological, physiological thing brings about psychosocial harm, the adverse effects of on psychosocial well-being. The power of addictive substances to produce positive feelings and relieve negative feelings fuels the development of compulsive use of substances. The combination of increased incentive salience, that is binge and intoxication, decreased reward sensitivity and increased stress sensitivity, withdrawal, negative affect stage, and compromised executive function, all right, provides an often overwhelming drive for substance seeking that can be unrelenting. So in this class, we will not be doing the rehabilitation part, but in order to do the rehabilitation part, you have to identify what areas of the brain, the neural pathways that are being affected by those substances in order to be able to do rehabilitation for the persons who are addicted or those who are suffering from addiction to substances. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, baby. So, is there anybody who would like to have any question on the presentation? Or you can drop your questions in the link.
I don't think they can.
So
they can type in or send it to you so that we can address it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's a little bit late, 1 hour and 37 minutes already.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay because it's a very important topic and it's something that you cannot complete within a short span of time.
Yeah,
we understand that, and it's so interesting. I was having a wonderful time, listening to your presentation. Like I remember when people used to say when Miss Baby explains takes physiology class, she enjoys it so much we can't stop enjoying ourselves. Also, it's so addictive.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You explain it in such a way. It's very, very interesting, and anybody can understand. But
it's very difficult to pique and interest from
But you made it very interesting.
Thank you.
Very interesting. So if
okay,
then if yes. Yeah, you can do that.
Tôi cho nó cái
Yeah.
Thì hết là Houston nó training nhà mà so phải thắc mắc mấy mình kalau phút nha kalau rồi đủ set semua di sini kan try lagi society tentang curiosity kami deal truth nava di ka survey pun ini teh di terus
curiosity peer pressure
sang sang trâu phát triển trên các địa các tàu đi về các nghề sporting
anh tìm mua anh tin nghe căn lâu
kan counter ang nghề society kan insecurity kan counter yang
counteract or more and curiosity
sang
okay, thank you so much for the question. Koyatagin mo ilaw zo.
Houston,
Texas.
Houston, Texas atagin mo. Awas lavang ve. Thank you. International leme lungitileng. Lungitileng leme kan US Princeton China, not Houston in Texas. Yeah, but Princeton, Jersey, into Princeton University. And curiosity himo here and curiosity here kan counteract kan ti top ay mahianin kan som hi apoy mo that is why Mizoram a payson oy ti tur hi lo engkim hi khap society kan nia hi kan inti ni chu engkim khap ringot chu tu na te po hian ka class te po hian in ti me lang in hey AI te tu na phe chuan in engkim hi an nei to thin ta khata khanin an curious not only about drugs more ma se engkim ma hian especially adolescents how he they're very curious so tu na po manilo ka po kan ting ti kanau te ho te nen te fa te en kol na te oi IG te an lo in post na se thei lu tu ka oi kum som pa ni so na mi pa te ne po lo in between ni on kap kan do fek to pa ni chu ma ero chu they're going to be curious about drugs about relationships about boys about girls kakanita khatianga khan chan kan ngai event chu about drugs ani chuanin hi khang ang te kha ani chuan heng hi thil thalo ni ti ang te in shil pa in educate hi ani mei in khap ngot ai pon ma sen kha ka what is very important is like we always say Julia ti research lampang te po kai no yin mo engkim me hi ke ni chuanin parenting hianin kan chui lut thi na ni chu mo kaka I enge fanau in enkol dana hianin chu I enge apoi mo ema nu le paten faten te atanga I an kom ngai kha apoi mo an interest don chu chuan in min ron deka chu mo I feel this way ti te I khati ang khan an nei anga khanga khan an nu le an pate or an caregiver so kha nu nei lo te pa nei lo te pon o mga whoever is doing the caregiving kanin I enge alo a curiosity ka alo phu shu pui chuta alo kom ngai because an te lai tanga kan ti lo chuan an play role khan kan kom ngai thut thei to don lo re kreng nu le pangei hu na thena in ti se ve si hu na thlen phi chuanin it's going to be so difficult to wang chuan an te lai tanga an curiosity enge han eng lo hi apoi mo ka tia chu wang chuanin ama ero chu enge an shil kan shil hi the right information at the right time hi apoi mo em in ka sia ke ma ni po in he awareness campaign te kan hanti ni ama ero chu chunga te po chuanin kan vazota tu tinge enge lo englo I kan audience tu tinge ti te po kha khati ang kha kan share kha angai em ta because the right information at the right time kha apoi mo because enge and curiosity and curious em are not only about drugs kha drugs chung chang kan in shila kan in zirtira khati ang kha kan lo inven lok tir life skills te zirtira how to say no ni ti ang chi te keima ni ang school anga ka Mizoram ang te po school te life skills te an in zirtira khati ang te kha poi mo ma chu kan lo do thei dan do ti mei langin o kha I don't know nang ma po in han eng lo la nang ma po in han san han share la
kati kha o curiosity kazonga curiosity kha siam ramiti na chu ani berang tu
kha shil information lo pek khap ti ringota thupa eng lo te chu wang chuanin ma sengin chu information pek kha achin to at the right time the right information at the right time ava poi mo te lul ekati kan thatnem ngai lu tukhian chu nya sex education chung chang te po mo khanga khanin film khur hi angai ema chumi level chon chu tiang chu ni se ti kha omte me ma ero chu each one hi kan dang lam le boxia kanin ang le vek boxi lawa chu wang chuanin I enge nu le pa te mo school zirtir tu te mo an enkol tu te hian ngai vena hriat chiana an curiosity kha I lo chan thei khati ang kha apoi mo kati thank you for the question
adikop me curiosity khan ya kan curb chuanin an rebel le tho china chubang chuanin kha
Julia te pon sai theinga ang chu
chuanin ta hianin adolescent so en kol tu hi an poi mo pati tu na isoi tang po khanin because that's that's the age where the curiosity omnis at na ber experiment dan do lai mo so so na en kol tu te do le pa le zip tir tu school zip tir tu te point mo ka ti ka ta khan chan chu mo le pathen khathi ti top me yang uncapable lo ve do to khin tamani ka he kan chan ro la ngai so bia ke de chang pon ko shan chang te pon mo ti na sa thi ngai ka ti
Mizoram pay to more. So because as a society, kan la collective lu tuk ta ka ni Sunday school ate chon income ti vel de chu chu khat po aswal ber thalo ber angkanin an phiar me ya Sunday school chon no income te pay hi chu fel lu tuk fel ber rualan ni ta khang angkha drugs chu nya hi chu nya oi LGBTQ and all of that when they are just beginning to Eric Erickson's more stages and climb like ang te poka siya tivan po mo tak em
question na name question name yeah
question ya pun lo ngai dan le curiosity in ron hit zoya and lo addiction himo kanun isi te mem
shi te ye
i tuna ko zo lo chan kan nei karing to si lo ka lo bo lo
te si ka mu te la chuak lo addiction
hi kanun na hei til enge molek wanga result pakhat ani ringem lo ni ta se tu mi tu enge yang ti lo ting tai lang internanin example ka pe thiam ba la internal nu le pa mai na khalel em lo ta se ka wang khan action at lo ka ta se then alternate result chuanin nu le pa mai na ang ta khadong ta se addiction kha asim thengem ti ang ve kha ka thwa ka lo ngai ka thwa kin lo ngai to do le ka i ngai ta se
okay
mi om lo ta ta
a lacking kha nu le pa mangai na khalo ni ta ang seng chu mi void chu drug addiction khan low in feel ta ang seng iti na mo chuan nu le pa mangai na ang chu lo dong ta ang seng drug addiction chu a feel him thei pa in iringem iti na ni em chu question
kami careful now hey in other aspect of things like not only mothers parents love
or void
shim can be void ka and craving khan in emo thil chazokin fuling ta se addiction sim kha samangem tilam pangani
yeah kakachu another behavior more another reinforcing behavior because apanga ya khan because drugs te khan enge an hanti do tan han soi kan thua ka yan do tan han soi ta ni kha chu wang chuan anything pleasurable kan ti ang hi an ni tan chuan a pleasurable talk to lo thin ta because a pleasure an experience sang lu tukha khami cover replace tu tur kha an mu zo to lo sang tok lo enge an dopaminergic eng lo khami va eng lo tur kha chung ang velte ani awang chuanin enge thil dang vati mo khate angte nuam zong han zon puile te khami ka har to thi ne em wangania addiction kha aharzia tu because addiction te po enge mishing tu kaneng lo zel turatana timeyang I enge procreate enge tam takni tura in kha chong turati nungzel turati chu eng in nge minti theiti rang reinforcement reward in mo kha rewarding sa to lu tu khati angkan han nei khan khami an nei lo le ta thut avoid ka ruk zuk fil tur kha I har sa em ta ni khami kha zon pui te psychologically to motivational interviewing kan ti ta hei pe hi chu I ke ma ina ka believe em ti mayang drug addiction rehabilitate na atan chuan chu I ke mani khan physically kan va pek theilo wang khan that motivation ka I enge vati phur le tura nun pa nga ya nung tur ang khan khatia angani khan chuanin something pleasurable dang zon puya khami kha reinforce khatia angati kha nga ya ama ero chu an hai ang vati ang chia anga kha va replace tum anga kha chu thil har sa tak anianga ama ero chu I don't know if I am allowed to say karina pakhat chawa chuan tharau thiang lim hian engkim he fulfill theina not re vek thein atikhat vek thei ti hi because chu mingmoi ne na kan research a po ani thawa chu soi po kha apoi em lo because hetiang ang workshop te kan tia chuanin tam tak enge pathian ring lo mi te po an om thin ta ama ero chu enge keima ni mu chu kan spirituality kha kan zir tho thawa chu spirituality a chuan in khom te I khami zong I khan tu tenge enge relapse lo ngat kan ti chuan tharau thiang lim nei in zom na nei kha ani tat kan mu chua hian chu ama ero chu khami taka kha objectively in avate theilova because it is beyond human intelligence asia attempt to anei tu chu ma ni kha kan ni ta kan nei ti kha khami kha an relapse lova a sustain thei ber achu khami kha chumi a infill chu I tu na void zuk fill thei tu om chun ni akashiat chu ani in kasya the Holy Spirit ka
Okay, thank you very much.
pathian thu ma em ring lo mi te lo om ver lo om ma se poi lo
That's okay.
shiat thei hi mo
You
aro
proved it.
aro pui
Scientifically improved how long
yeah
from your research.
yeah
So the question pakati oma patiar medon mim. Miss, what exactly makes it so addictive? Dopamine is one aspect, but doesn't it have to be done in repetition for habit formation to take place? Is it the personality of a person that makes them more likely to get addicted, or is it the aspect of instant gratification?
Kha chu nia a substances kha addictive em awang khan khatiang ang khami khanin adu le ngoi thil tui kan ti chuan kha kan order a oi tui tukasin kan order le du thina ni more because we are rewarded khami shing ni phung hi anishim mishing pa ngai ni phung kha anishim ta what makes it so addictive kan ti chuan because that pleasure center kha khan thu dot kha han shil ne lu tuk tok tilaya in chiu seu khan nuam thei ang per let taman nuam khan kha substance khan a han siam ani chu mo chumi awang chuan mi in ti le kha du ta ati le khan khatilai in zom na kha achak ta so habit forming kan ti habit formation kamo chuan chu anita of course the personality ka it develops all right you are born with temperaments of course amairo chu kan personality chu it is personality what makes a personality it is the interaction of the biological and the psychological tiro kha ka chu personality ya po kan zirna sa to lu tukta so kan invite chu mi wang tak chuan ni chi na risk factors karon soi te kha khang kha an poi mo ta ni mom chu chu kan te atangin a big takin kan theory a kan lu phei chuan mo 6 years before 6 years a khan an impulses si control to turni ti te kha anita ni kan psychological theories a chuan because unconscious an fek ma for a deal te ani ma kan so all those things are impacting our personality so each one is different each one is unique but there are people who are more prone in terms of to an impulsivity hi personality factor teni tatiro kaka ama po a I enge psychological factors kalosoi to ho kha kang ang ho kha impulsivity te mo kang ang kha compulsivity ti te keima ni a bit net to as we grow mo khami kha enge the environment positive reinforcement le negative reinforcement a big takin drug addiction a chuan khami atira positive reinforcement chu ta relapse a chuan negative reinforcement reinforcement kan ti shim chuan a positive or negative or it is the likelihood the strengthening of the behavior kha a strengthen kat ve ta khami awang khanin but of course there are personalities and there are genetic makeup there more a risk factors a khan kha alan vector kha ama kalo soi to khamo khang ang ho khan mi kha it makes them vulnerable mom to enge the belief to self control there more internal self efficacy the belief that you have self esteem kati theyani ti in chat na te nu le pa te na kan te atanga kan behavior min monitor than self control nei tu ra min ti than te mo and enge mo ka curious mi chi na bi englo ang khan a curious to positive relationships ka ne ya ani ka zo the ya apa ka zo the ya ti te mo khati ang khanin le thil thamin shil tu te chon kan neighborhood kha athaboka mo tu na kan neighborhood ti thalawania om so oi mi pa kei rol ho lo thu ho ringot te an bulawa thu ringot ti ka du thin an vulnerable tu kyang ka chiani chu kong sira an lo thu ho ve ring tanga eng ma ti lo fen lu tu in tiam po khani se an vulnerable hi ka vati te lul em because a leng sup atlom lu tu tia ang kha ani boxia mo kawang khanin addiction khan like we have said before it has so many factors that leads a person to be addicted at hang tem so bel doing em
Hi.
Yes, Miss Hang, thank you so much.
So, any questions? So do you know do the in put color raise me? Ula raise your hands because that's what do. That's one. You're most welcome. Do not one say anybody who wants to who has clarifications to make, you can do so because yeah we
or one questions well to lala
so
thaya to do an chuan otherwise you can ask again because we're just starting
yeah we'll do this again anwam anyway
aki man te po kan reng do na
yeah ipan lo the ma nang mai with the tight schedule last year we couldn't make it a success.
Yeah,
or always busy. Yeah. So we'll do again.
Yeah.
There are many topics that we would like to do again with you. Anyway,
that would be great.
Yeah. Call you very often. So anyway, thank you very much for giving us your precious moment. We know your time is so precious. Everybody needs you. Everybody wants to invite you, and the society really needs you. And I feel proud to be your student. And I would like to tell, and everybody here that Miss Melody, Miss Pari, and me, we are her students, and very
Yeah.
proud to be,
Oh.
Your product.
I'm very proud of
you.
you all. Oh, kalom na tuk min lo
Yeah.
so min lo la shevang fanga.
Of course,
Okay.
we were waiting for that
Thank you so
moment to
much.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you. Okay. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye. Good